Hello. So yeah, I managed to go 5 years without giving a presentation in person, but a PowerPoint god denied me, so here I am. So as Tara mentioned, I help with organising this. When I'm not doing that, I also there we go. And when I'm doing that, I also work in advocacy and awareness raising and consulting as well. This morning, I'm going to kick things off, as I always do, with a news update. A look at some of the highlights of the great progress that have been made over the past 6 months since our last event. Before I start, firstly, a dedication to Mike Begum, also known as Brollylegs. I knew Mike for many years. If you didn't have that pleasure, then please pick up his book. It's on Amazon. It's called My Life Beyond the Floor. Everything that we do in the field of accessibility is built upon the shoulders of those who came before. So Mike's influence and impact on the industry will continue to live on. And secondly, there's no way to sugarcoat this. It has been an absolutely grim time for the industry. I'm sure pretty much everyone watching, if not directly impacted themselves, at least knows somebody who has been. Morale and motivation are tough in times like these, but accessibility is one area, at least, that's headed squarely in the right direction, with all kinds of wonderful advances all across the industry. It's more important than ever to celebrate every win, and there have been a lot. There's a lot to cover, so it will be coming at you pretty quick, but don't feel like you need to keep notes or look things up, because at the end, I'm going to give you a link to a document, and that document will include links to everything that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to cover a few topics: assistive tech, resources, both for players and for developers, events, games, and people. So first up, assistive tech. The big AT headline has been, of course, the launch of the PlayStation Access Controller. I know I've talked about this a lot already in previous events, but now it's actually here. It's on the shelves. It's in players' hands. If you aren't already aware, it's a device with configurable layouts and configurable button styles that can be paired with another access controller or a regular PlayStation controller, with the option to also hook up a few accessibility switches too. That's what those ports in the front are for. Accessibility switches are individual extra inputs like buttons, tubes to blow into, and so on. It's quite a different approach to other devices that are on the market. It kind of sits in the middle between fully customizable devices and fully bespoke devices. It's not aiming to hit every single need, but it is aiming to make a difference to a substantial number of players out of the box without buying very many or even any additional inputs. It's been a busy time elsewhere too. This is the VRA box from OneSwitch, aimed at making racing games more accessible. It's this box at the top right there with the dial on it, and it sits in between a button and a device like the Access controller or the Xbox Adaptive controller. And that dial lets you control how far you want the analog trigger to be pushed in. And the HID remapper V7, again for both the Access controller and the Adaptive controller. This is a device which allows a much wider range of sticks to be connected. The ultimate switch box from Praetorian, which is a PC switch interface with dedicated game inputs. And the next iteration of Microsoft's adaptive accessories. New to the lineup are the dual switch button at the bottom right, and also the thing in the middle there, which is 4 directional switches underneath a powered wheelchair style joystick. And also from Microsoft, a series of player spotlight videos to help explain ways to set up and use the Xbox Adaptive Controller. This is an approach that PlayStation have taken too, and it's great to see both of these companies centering their guidance on the lived experiences of players. So as always, nothing about us without us. Which leads us neatly onto the next section, which is resources for players. The Game Content Triggers database launched. This is a community-driven effort to analyze and record the presence of triggery content and share it in a searchable tagged database. It's a huge boon for people with conditions like PTSD and phobias. It's already at around 250 games, and it's now actually even being linked back to by developers from the websites of their own games. Game Lover from Capgame has been one of the consistently best resources for accessibility reviews of games. But the reviews have only been in French, and that's now changed. Since January, they've been translated into English too. And we've also seen some lovely work from developers themselves to get accessibility info out there to players. And this is one of them. This is a media event that Hyperluminal recently held, inviting accessibility and mental health advocates into the studio for a showcase of the accessibility work in their game Pine Hearts. And they put out a really nice public video about it too. And really hot off the press, just a couple of days ago, Licker Studios used part of their trailer slots at Nintendo Indie World to communicate the accessibility work that they've done on their game called Stitch. It is incredibly rare to see something like this at a mainstream showcase event, but it's also incredibly valuable. So please, please, more of this. If you want to generate buzz for your game, make sure that you're doing it for all of your players. So moving on to developer resources, and there are a lot. At the last event, I talked quite a bit about this, keywords entering the accessibility service provider space with Advancing Accessibility, which was their accessibility service offered through Player Research, quite a few of whom are in the room today. And that has now progressed nicely onto a couple more new players too. EasySurf, who initially started out with web accessibility, are now doing game accessibility consultancy too, with a wide range of lived experience that includes people like Brandon Cole, Mike Luckett, and Ricky Pointer. And the Games Accessibility Hub in France. Last year, we sadly lost B Player One, but it's living on a new form, with Olivier Nouri and Timothy Lanceau at B Player One now teaming up with Michael Delova to offer consulting, training, workshops, and playtesting. And we've also had a bunch of new tools. This is Iris, which is EA's internal photosensitive epilepsy analysis tool. This has now been open sourced for other developers to use, and you'll be hearing all about that later today. And next is a huge one. Screen reader accessible interfaces in Unity have officially arrived. It's only the first step along their roadmap, so it is a bit limited still. It's API access only, and it's currently only for iOS and Android. But even so, this is a momentous step, not just for Unity, but for the whole industry. The most popular engine supporting natively blind accessible interfaces is a watershed moment for accessibility. On a similar note, an extension for the Godot engine that hooks up directly to NVDA, which is the most popular PC screen reader. And this was actually made as part of a game jam, the Games for Blind Gamers Jam earlier this year. And lastly, Guide Play. This is made by the headphone manufacturers, JBL. This is a blind accessibility mod for Counter-Strike 2 that adds spatial audio cues for proximity to walls, to enemies, and to team members. And it also has a Sea of Thieves style audio aim assist with frequency of beeping telling you how close your crosshairs are to a target. And the reason for including it in this section as a tool is because they're actually releasing it as open source for other developers to make use of. And there have been some new informational resources for developers too. This one is from Rovio. It's their new playbook on inclusive game development, and that includes a chapter on accessibility, which is geared towards mobile games. We've also had the Empower Up guide for disability and neurodiversity in the game development workplace. And we have a book, Disability and Video Games, Practices of N/Disabling Modes of Digital Gaming. So fair warning, this is an academic book, so the price is a bit scary, but still, it is a bit nonetheless. And of course, the most important resource of all is people, right? Learning from your peers, learning from players, which is why we're all here today, right? And today's event is run through an association. It's through the IGDA's Game Accessibility SIG. And a couple of weeks ago, saw the launch of another association with the same goals of furthering accessibility through collaboration, knowledge sharing, dissemination of information, and events. And that association is GAAJ, the Game Accessibility Association of Japan.
Recording in progress.
The Japanese industry has made huge progress in the past couple of years through games like Hi-Fi Rush, Street Fighter 6, Like a Dragon, Grand Blue, Wild Hearts, and so on. So a move like this is both very well timed and very exciting to see. And we've had some fun little nuggets of data as well. So firstly, this one is something game specific. Alongside the launch of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, the team shared some usage data from Modern Warfare 2. And over half of their players adjusted graphical accessibility settings like FOV and motion blur. And 40% of their players adjusted the controller dead zone setting alone. At a broader level, the annual accessibility question in the GDC State of the Industry survey. This year, it returned 48% of developers saying that their companies had implemented some form of accessibility in their current projects. Obviously, less than half is still a long way from where we need to be, but that 48% is an increase of 10% since last year. That's the biggest leap of any year yet. So it's clearer than ever that we're on the right trajectory. And there have been a few nice things happening in events too. Stalwarts like Xbox and Blizzard have been carrying on their good work on both in-person and remote events with things like audio description, sign language, and hands-on chats with developers. The National Video Game Museum here in the UK have just been running an exhibit on eye gaze gaming in collaboration with Special Effects. And we've just had the first edition of the International Fair of Inclusive Video Games in Spain, which is 3 days of talks, workshops, training, exhibits, and awards. There were a ton of other awards ceremonies too. They're commonplace enough now that there are too many to go through them all individually, but they of course included the GA Conf Awards. So if you want to see the ceremony, the winners, the finalists, and also information on why they were all nominated, just go to gaconf.com and hit awards. There's loads of nice reference in there, loads of good stuff to learn from. But there is one other awards ceremony that I'm going to call out because this edition of the conference is in the UK and I'm in the UK too, so I'm clearly biased, and that is the MCV Awards. The MCV Awards are for games that are either developed or published by UK companies. And the finalists were announced last week, and the accessibility nominees are an awesome group. Those nominees are Blink and the Vacuum of Space, Disney Illusion Island, Moving Out 2, Polyfury, Sky Tales, Sniper Elite VR Winter Warrior, Stories of Blossom, and Warhammer 40k Boltgun. All of these pushing the bar in their own way. So congrats to them all, and you'll be hearing more about one of these games straight after this talk. So that brings me neatly onto what it's all about, what everything else that I've been talking about has been in service of, which is the games themselves. So this is where it's going to get really quick fire. There's going to be loads of names firing out. So just again, a reminder, you don't need to take notes, you don't need to look anything up. I'm going to give you a document at the end, which is going to have all of this in there. It's been another bumper time for AAAs with games like Spider-Man 2, Assassin's Creed Nexus VR, Modern Warfare 3, Rise of the Ronin, Avatar, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Tekken, Granblue, Like a Dragon, Skull and Bones, Helldivers 2, all doing awesome things for accessibility. And as always, indies have been smashing it too. Just a few worth checking out are Botany Manor, Pacific Drive, A Highland Song, Super 56, Word Voyance, Home Safety Hotline, Rococo, Ultros, and Adventure to Fate, Lost Island. There are loads of games making strong post-launch commitments through patches and updates too, with particularly strong efforts from Diablo 4, JSON, Cyberpunk, Mortal Kombat 1, Spider-Man 2, As Dusk Falls, and Jedi Survivor. And Mortal Kombat 1 in particular has had a lot of love from the Blinds community, from their relentless ongoing upgrades to the screen reader functionality in the game. And older games are being brought to wider audiences through adding accessibility in remakes and remasters, like The Last of Us 2, Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney, Another Code, Tomb Raider, Dark Forces, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and Alone in the Dark. And across all of these, there's two key themes that keep popping up. The first is audio description. So for those who don't know, this is an optional extra audio track in which a narrator gives a verbal description of what is happening visually. So this is for the benefit of people who have difficulty seeing or following what is happening. It's standard practice in TV, but until a very short time ago, this was a thing that just didn't exist in games at all. And now it's spreading, and spreading quickly. In the past 6 months, it's popped up in The Last of Us 2 remake, in As Dusk Falls, in Spider-Man 2. It's something that has really broad benefit across a lot of different groups of players. It's relatively low cost, and in terms of production, it's relatively self-contained too. There aren't a lot of interdependencies. So I'm expecting the adoption of this to only accelerate. And the second is this, high contrast modes. So what you're looking at here is screenshots from Modern Warfare 3, Spider-Man 2, Jedi Survivor, and Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. They're all showing various ways to increase contrast between different classes of important gameplay elements, and also to increase contrast between those elements and the background. So this concept of high contrast modes isn't a new thing, but the way that it's now quickly spreading between AAA studios and publishers is new. So I don't think we're close to a perfect implementation yet. There's still room for innovation here, but the fact that so many different companies are now taking their first steps in this can only mean that we'll get to a good place. And in general, between this and between audio description and also all the mainstream games that are pushing towards or achieving fully independent play for sightless players, Seeing this breadth of efforts to include players with sight loss is fantastic. It really wasn't very many years ago at all that efforts in mainstream games for this were close to non-existent. And on to the last section now, the people who make it all possible. And it's not all good news. How horrendous a time it has been for the industry has impacted accessibility too. Full-time accessibility staff have lost their jobs. People working on accessibility part-time have lost their jobs too. Job ads have been pulled. Other roles have been pulled before they're even advertised. Experienced accessibility folk have even left the industry completely, which is a tragic loss. Recently, we lost 3 dedicated accessibility roles in the space of a week. Now, 3 might not sound like a big number, but that's actually around 5% of the global headcount in the space of a week. But it's not all bad news. So a short time ago, accessibility would have been first out the door. So the fact that most accessibility folk are still actually in their jobs is some source of comfort, at least in the progress that accessibility is made as a dedicated and valued discipline. And it does also mean that there are some experienced, knowledgeable, and talented people available for you to work with now who were previously off the table. People like Michelle Garza, Leanna Ripper, Britt Dye. So hit them up, make the most of that opportunity while it's here. And there have even been some new full-timers too. So a big welcome to Cameron Ackett, who is now accessibility user researcher at PlayStation, and to Joshua Flitcroft, who is now technical accessibility designer at IO Interactive. And one more too, maybe you. There is currently a vacancy advertised at Amazon Games for an accessibility lead. Xbox and Netflix have been hiring too. Perhaps we might find out the results of that soon. I also know of a couple of internal hires and a couple more job ads due to be posted over the coming months. So if you're interested in opportunities like these, then keep an eye on the job openings channel on the SIG Discord. So on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. I hope this has been a bit of light in the dark and also given you some fire in your bellies to take forward into the coming year too. And just one last thing, that document I keep threatening, it has links to everything I mentioned in the talk, plus a bunch of other nice advances too. There were just too many to fit them all into a talk. You can find that at tinyurl.com/gaconf-apr24. Thank you for watching. I hope the next 2 days treat you well, and I will see you in the Discord.